Hello and welcome to my channel. If you like DIYs, farmhouse decor, upcycling, and more, you've come to the right place. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Hi everyone, Janie here, and today I'm going to be making 3 farmhouse fall decor projects using these free printables that I got from the cottage market, and I'll put a link below to that where you can find them. And I have printed these on cardstock, tissue paper, and napkins. So if you want to see how I'm using these, let's head on over and get started. For this project, I'm going to be making this harvest market sign, and I'll be using this free printable that I got from the cottage market, and I'm going to put a link below in the description box to their website so that you can find them. And I am also going to be using some of these 1-gallon paint stirrers or paint sticks, and they come in a 10-pack for 98 cents. You can pick them up at Lowe's or Home Depot. And what I have done is, well, actually my husband did this for me. He cut off the top part of these because I actually use these for other crafts such as refrigerator magnets and you know, embellishments and things. And once you cut them in half, these are going to be 9 inches long. Okay, and we're only going to be using 7 of these. And also, we'll be using some, you know, paint sticks that are smaller ones, or, you know, popsicle sticks, craft sticks, whatever you've got. So let's get started. So here are the 7 paint sticks that I'm using, and you'll notice that on the back of mine there's writing, but that's not a problem. Just make sure that all of the writing is either facing up or facing down. And I'm going to be using my Beacon Fabri-Tac because it's made to use with wood and it's permanent. I know some of you prefer to use hot glue, and that'll work just as well, but I'm just not much of a hot glue person. But if you are using a glue like I'm using, do be sure to squeeze the pieces together once in a while for about 30 seconds just to make sure they have good contact. Okay, I've got it all glued together, and I've flipped it over so that the writing is on this side because that'll be covered by our sign. And now it's time to put the braces on the back. And that's where these 1-quart paint sticks come in handy, or craft sticks. Or you can even use the 3 leftover paint sticks, but they will be too long, so you'll have to, you know, cut them down. And for me, it is easier to cut these. And I've already cut 2 of them, and I've drawn a line on each one so I know where to cut. And these things go flying when I cut them. I don't want it to go flying clear off the table. Ooh, that one almost did. Sometimes they go flying behind my craft table and I can't get to them. Okay, good. Those worked. So I'm just going to glue these on as braces on the back. Okay, now the glue is dried, and you could take the sign and adhere it to the front, leaving the back just like that. Or you can do what I'm going to do, which is paint the back using this flat white paint from Rust-Oleum, or, you know, using chalk paint, whatever you want to use. But I'm going to go spray this and I'll be back. Okay, I've got the back painted, and now it's time to put the sign on the front of it. And to do that, I am going to be using 2 things. I am going to be using this spray adhesive because it gives full coverage, and I really like full coverage, knowing that everything is adhered down really well. And I'm also going to be using Fabri-Tac, which is great for wood, among other things. And the reason I'm going to use that is to give me a little wiggle room. So I'm actually going to put a little around the edges, and then I am going to spray it, and then I'm going to have this turned over. I'm going to turn this over and get it centered right on there. So I can't do any spraying around, you know, my camera and my laptop, so I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got it on there, and I want to go with a little bit of a rustic look. So I'm going to sand the edges just a little bit, kind of roughing it up a little bit. And then once I do that, I'm going to be adding a little paint around the edges. Okay, so I've just got this, whoops, I got some wax paper down here that I've painted on before, and this little sponge brush. You can pick these up in a pack. I think you can find them at Dollar Tree. They come with bigger ones, smaller ones, different sizes. And I'm just going to be using a little bit of, dab it off on here a little bit of brown paint. I don't have the name of it. It's actually a sample that I got. So I'm just kind of dabbing it on like that, okay? And I'm just going to do that all the way around the edges, and I'll speed this up a little bit so that you don't have to watch the whole process, because I don't have anything amazing to say while I'm doing this. Okay, I love that look, and I'm gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna be right back. While we're waiting for that to dry, I thought I'd show you what I used. So this is a paint sample. I got it from either Home Depot or Lowe's, I don't remember now. And it's got 7 ounces in it, and I got to pick the colors that I wanted. So I actually have several of these samples, and these are interior house paints, and this one is Vase. But this is a great way to get paints for your crafts at such a really good price at only, like, you know, like I said, $3.50 for this whole thing. So I just wanted to share that with you. And now that that's dry, I'm going to be taking it outside and giving it about 3 coats of this Mod Podge matte clear acrylic sealer. And I do that to protect it from the elements. Okay, for me, this is done. And I just love the way that this came out. But for some of you that might want to hang this on a wall or have it sitting freestanding, I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so if you want this to set up by itself, you can use some Jenga blocks or tumbling tower blocks that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and just glue them right on the back to these little braces. Glue them right there. You can even do it on all 3 if you want, and I'm not going to do it right now, but it will create a little stand for it. Let's see if I can, no, I can't get a good view on camera, but it will create a little stand for it. So that is one way of doing it. Now if you want to hang it, the way that I like to do it is I cut a piece of twine that is just a little bit longer than the sign, or a little bit wider than the sign, and I just tie a knot on each end like so. And you will also need some, well, glue or a hot glue gun. For this I'm going to use the hot glue gun, but normally I would use my Beacon Fabri-Tac. Okay, so with that done, and actually I can bring those knots in just a little bit closer. So that's the fun part of doing it this way, is is figuring out exactly where to tie the knots. But not a problem, just readjust where you're tying it. And so I'm just going to come in a little bit there and see, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to clip this one end off like so, because we don't need that anymore. And now we have it the right length. So you can see that the knots reach the end right here. And then I'm going to take, uh-oh, I lost one. There it is. 2 pieces of burlap ribbon. Now you can use burlap ribbon, you can use faux leather, you can use whatever you want. And first I'm going to glue that down, and then I'm going to glue this over the top like so. And if you're wondering why I glue it, let me see if I can pull this up closer to the camera. Okay, I glue it with a knot on the outside So once it's glued, the knot will snag or, you know, catch right there, and it won't pull out. So you just kind of have to decide where you're doing it and do your best to get it even. I would mark it personally. And even though this is my favorite way to add a hanger to the back of things, I'm sure you may have some ideas of your own, because I know there are many possibilities, but I just wanted to share this way of doing it with you. There you go. That's what it looks like. And then you have this little hanger on the back. So that is how easy it is to put a hanger on the back or to put little legs on the back. Personally, I'm going to be leaning mine up against something, and I'll show you a picture of that. For this project, I'm going to be decorating this cheese board that I picked up at a craft store a few years ago, and they no longer sell it. But you can use any cheese board or cutting board you find. You can find something at the Dollar Tree. And it also doesn't matter what size it is, because the cool thing about printables is you can print them out to any size that you need. And another cool thing about printables is that you can print them out on paper or cardstock or tissue paper like I did here, or even napkins. But for this, I just took a piece of white tissue paper and I taped it to a piece of cardstock. You can tape it to a piece of paper, and I ran it through the printer. So this is another wonderful image from the Cottage Market, and links below in the description box to their website. But I absolutely love these free printables. They are awesome. So I sized this one to fit on here. And because I used an inkjet printer, I really need to let this sit till it dries, and I'm actually going to let it sit 24 hours. If you use a laser printer, it will be ready immediately. But inkjet printers, it takes a little time, and I've even heard of a technique of spraying hairspray over it to help set it. But I'm going to let this set, and while this is setting, I am going to be painting this. Now normally I would use something like this home decor chalk paint, but because most of this is going to be covered, or it'll be the back, I'm actually going to run outside and spray it with this Rust-Oleum High Performance, and this is a flat white, and so I'm going to give it 1 or 2 coats depending on how much it needs, and then when that's dry, this should be dry and we'll be ready to go. Well, I decided that 1 coat of paint was all that needed, and now it's time to remove our tissue paper from this cardstock and trim around it. Okay, I've got the image all trimmed out. I left a border around it, but I'll be removing that later and I'll show you how. But for right now, I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to be using Mod Podge, and I'm going to put 3 or 4 coats of Mod Podge on the front of this cheese board, and I'll let it dry in between each layer. So it takes about 20 minutes in between each layer to completely dry. But I am not going to be applying the image to wet Mod Podge. I'm going to show you how to apply it to dry Mod Podge. Okay, I put 4 coats of matte Mod Podge on here, and now it's time to take our image that was printed on the tissue paper, and I can see right through it, so I can line it up right where I want it, just like that. And you're wondering, how are we going to get that to stick? Well, I'm going to be using this craft iron, and you may not have a craft iron that looks like this. You may have, you know, the regular little craft iron. You could actually probably use a regular iron if you're really careful. And so what I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1, I have some parchment paper here to protect the tissue paper. But before I do that, I'm just going to kind of touch it in a couple of places, just so that this doesn't move where I don't want it. Okay, now if you're wondering, I have this set on medium. Some craft irons don't even have a setting. I've done this on high before too, and I may have to move it up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and just lay it right across there. And I'm going to start ironing. And what's happening while I'm doing this is the heat from the craft iron is, I guess you would say, melting the Mod Podge. And so it's reliquefying it, I guess. And it is creating an adhesive for the tissue paper. So I'm just going to keep doing this until I'm sure that it is completely adhered. So I'll have to take a peek at it every once in a while.
If you are careful, you can iron over it without the parchment paper. But just be careful to not stay in one place too long because you don't want to scorch the tissue paper. And you saw me tug at the edge a little, and that was just to make sure that it was adhered well.
Now we have that adhered, and well, I'm double checking here. And now we are ready to remove the edges. And to remove the edges, I'm going to use my water brush, which is like a paintbrush, so you can use a paintbrush in water. And I'm just going to lift this up, and I'm just going to go right along the edge of this, just like that. And it will peel right off, just like that. And I'm going to do that all the way around and get rid of all of the excess tissue paper that I don't want on here. Once you've got the majority of it off, you can just kind of go around the edges using your thumbnail, or you can even come in with some sandpaper and just get all the little excess pieces that are on here, because there will be some little pieces that got missed, and you may have to re-wet it, because once it dries, it's, you know, dry again. But just use your thumbnail and get off any excess that you want off. Now with that done, you can leave it just the way it is, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is just dab on some paint around the edges. And I did this in the first project today, and I really like that look, so I'm doing it again. And then when I'm done doing this and it's dry, I will go outside and give it a couple coats of Mod Podge matte. And then it will be done. I gave it 3 coats of the Mod Podge matte clear acrylic sealer, and I added a burlap bow. But guess what? This is where the fun begins, because you can do so much more with this. You can use stickers to add words, or if you have a Cricut, you can, cut out vinyl and add words to this. You can add embellishments like I did on this one, that I added flowers, and this one was done with a napkin, and I'll put a link to this video right up here on the screen. Let's see, you can just use that to hook over a nail to hang it on a wall, or you can put something through it like I did with this raffia. You could do it with twine and create a hanger for it. And let's see, what else can you do with this? Well, I am thinking if you wanted, you could put magnets on the back and stick it on your refrigerator. There are just so many possibilities for this, and I absolutely love the way that this turned out. Let me show you some pictures. Okay, I'm pretty sure you all know that I love upcycling and trash to treasure, and so for this project I'm just going to be using this empty jar. It used to be a pickle jar. You can use any jar you want, any size you want, because you can print these images out any size that you want. And I've printed out 2 images that are from the cottage market, and I absolutely love them, and I printed them out the size to fit on the jar, which is really easy to do. I'm not going to give any demonstrations today with something like, Publisher, but that's what I used actually, was Publisher to do this. I didn't use Photoshop or anything. And I printed it out on a napkin. Now, you can see part of the napkin down here. A lot of napkins come with a lot of white space on them. Let me show you. This is the rest of the napkin that I had used, and so you can see there is still a white section here. Out of the 4 squares, only one of them had a print on it. And you can usually tell when you buy the napkins, if you look at the back of the package, you'll be able to see if they're white, just like with this. So that is the front, and this means there's going to be 4 squares of just plain white. And so that's what I've done. I just cut out a piece and stuck it on there and taped it down and ran that through my printer. And when using an inkjet printer, you are going to need to let it sit till it dries. I let it sit 24 hours. If you're using a laser printer, you'll be ready to go right away. Now, the jar. Normally I would paint it with this home decor chalk paint. I love, love, love this stuff. It does really great. But today I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to be painting it with this Rust-Oleum in a flat white. And I'm going to give it probably a couple of coats. And then once that is dry, this will be dry, and we will get on to putting these on the jar. And this will make a really great little vase, or a jar to hold your kitchen utensils in, wooden spoons or things like that. So a lot of possibilities. Okay, I've given the jar 2 coats of paint, and I have removed the napkins from the cardstock that I had them on to get them printed. And when working with napkins, there's usually 2 or 3 layers, and you're going to have to remove that. So I've already got this one started, but you just remove that back layer. Okay, and I'm going to do that with both of these. So there we go. And once I get that done, you can cut around these images with scissors if you would like, or you could leave the leave it just the way it is. I like to use a water brush or a wet paint brush. And actually, let me put some water in here first.
Okay, this is hilarious. I don't know if you all know what Alexa is, but mine was listening to me and decided that it was time to start giving information on using water and a paintbrush to tear napkins. So I had to turn the sound off on this part of the recording and do voiceover. How rude of Alexa to do that. But anyway, what I'm doing is I'm just going around the image with the wet brush because it makes it easier to remove the excess napkin.
So as you can see, by doing it that way, you just get these kind of softer, ragged edges instead of a blunt cut. And that's just what I prefer. And then we put it on there, and it just kind of, I don't know, it has a nicer look. I really like the way that the edges look like that. So I'm going to do the same thing to this one, and then we can start putting it on the jar. Okay, these are both ready to put on that jar, and I just love the way they turned out. And by the way, don't throw away those white layers that you just took off the napkins, or that I just took off the napkins, because you can use them again to print on again. Okay, I'm going to kind of move those to the side for a second, bring in the jar, and I'm bringing in the Mod Podge because that's what we're going to be using. And I'm just going to decide where I want to put my image. I'm going to get myself a little Mod Podge here. Now you don't want a lot of Mod Podge for this, just a little bit, okay? Otherwise it's just going to get mushy. So I'm just going to put the Mod Podge right in here. I make sure I have a big enough space. I think that's big enough. Okay, As you can see, I'm just putting on a thin coat. That's it. You don't want it to be all sloppy. And I already know that my images are going to fit in between here. So let me grab this one. And you know, you can tell that it doesn't lay exactly flat. So when placing it down, be careful that you're not wrinkling it more than it's already going to get wrinkled. Just gently lay it down. And gently tap it, getting it to lay flat. So, you know, we're putting it on a curved surface, so you don't want to just try to flatten it out all at once. Okay, we're just going to do this very gently. And you may end up with some wrinkles, and that's okay. I personally like a few little wrinkles in it. I think it just gives it, I don't know, more of a vintage look maybe. Look at that, I got a bubble in there, so you have to be careful. So you don't want to rub this. So what I've got here is some plastic wrap, and it is just, let me grab it here, it is just cling wrap, okay? And you can put that over the top, and once you do that, then you can rub it to smooth it out. Still be gentle, you know, but just use the plastic wrap and just smooth everything out the best that you can. And this is going to look so beautiful. And by the way, if you move the cling wrap off and you realize that you want to flatten a little bit more out, get a new piece of cling wrap just in case, you know, this one has Mod Podge on it, because you don't want it to get Mod Podge back on your image. You also don't want your hair in here. Well, that's just hilarious. Okay, so there we go, and you can see that didn't have enough Mod Podge underneath it, so I can add some right there, but that's what it looks like so far. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side with this one, and then we will move on to the next step. Okay, I've got both sides of the jar done, and it is just so nice to touch it. It's just nice and soft. But to protect it, you can either brush on a Mod Podge of your choice, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is spray it. And Mod Podge has several different spray sealers. That way you don't leave brush marks. And I was torn between using the matte or using the Super High Shine, and the Super High Shine has won out because I really want this to have a nice glossy look to it. So I'm going to go do that. I'll bring it back and show it to you, and we will be done with this project. And after 2 coats of the Mod Podge Super High Shine Clear Acrylic Sealer, not only are these images sealed and protected, but look at the beautiful gloss on this jar. I just love the way that this turned out. And a little hint, when spraying, whether it be a sealer or paint, if you're spraying something that is curved down at the bottom and at the top, what I like to do is first I'll sit it up straight and I'll spray it, and then for the second coat I turn it upside down and spray it, and that way it gets good coverage everywhere. And I added a little bow, but that is optional, you know, putting a ribbon around the top, but I thought it looked really cute. And now let me show you some pictures.
Thank you all for stopping by today, and I hope that you like these projects. And if you do, I hope you watch for more home decor projects on my channel. Happy crafting, everyone. Bye-bye. If you like this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, I hope you consider that too. And if you do, be sure to click the little bell next to the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos or giveaways. And I hope you stop by Crafters Castle on Facebook and also Crafters Castle Challenge blog to enter your creations.